Network. Welcome to God's Classroom of Higher Learning.
I'm Pastor Davis, pastor teacher.
Greetings, my brothers and sisters. I'll take this opportunity today to talk to you for a few minutes about fear and the suspicious nature of the human race. When we think about the goodness of God, who God is, who we are, and who we are in God, and all the greatness that God has placed in us and allowed us to be able to grow in His grace. The question then becomes, why do we have so much fear in us? Fear is the nature and characteristics of the devil. The devil likes to terrorize the children of God. His whole mission is to destroy God's kingdom. And when we think about how does Satan work to destroy God's kingdom, he works through us as human beings. He instills fear in our minds. He instills that lack of insecurity in us. And when he does that, everything around us becomes of a suspicious nature. We look at each other and say, well, why is this or why is that? Well, the text that we are studying from, if you turn to your Bibles in the book of 2 Timothy, we're going to look at chapter 1 and in verse 7. In chapter 1 verse 7, the Bible says this. It says, "For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but He has given us the spirit of power, and He's given us the spirit of love, and the spirit of a sound mind." So when we look at this and we see the Bible clearly telling us that God did not give us this spirit of fear and doubt and suspicious, then where does it come from? Well, from the very beginning of time, we as human beings were born into this world, a world that is filled with fear, envy, and doubt. And because of that nature, the families that we grow up in, the people that we associate with, the schools that we attend, the jobs that we work on, we find that people of all races, creeds, colors, religious backgrounds, whatever you want to describe us, basically have a nature of fear. If we look at the job market and the offices and factories that we work in, it's almost like a dog eat dog world, whereas we are competing with each other for that position that someone else has. We envy that person that has a higher position than we have. And so we are always attacking and growling at what is there to be able to take away that position that person has so that we can ease into it, and for whatever reason to be able to make more money or to have more prestige or impress the boss or impress our fellow workers or whatever it might be. These are the things that come about in that world. So it all stems from our minds of fear. We fear the loss of a loved one. We fear that death is going to come upon us. We fear that our marriages or relationships are going to go awry. But everything centers around fear. And when we allow this fear to take control of us and be such a part of us, how do we expect to be able to succeed in this world that God has brought us to? You see, in our last few sessions, we have talked about living in this season and this time. The old is in the past, that is the year of 2013, and now we're in the new season of 2014. And this is the seasons, my brothers and sisters, that I say to you that you are in your season. It is a choice that you as an individual make in order to be able to go any place that you may desire in this year of 2014. And so how are you going to arrive at the top of the ladder? Let's say, for instance, that you're trying to get to the top of the corporate ladder, or you're trying to achieve greatness in your marriage or your relationship, or you're trying to reach that plateau in school or in your church or even in your community. Whatever it may be, it is a choice that you have made in terms of the direction that you have sought out, that you're going in. And now that you're going in this direction, you are going to expect Satan to lay roadblocks in your pathway. And as Satan lay these roadblocks in your pathway, he's instilling fear in you. And this fear is to throw you off your game plan. And when it comes about, that fear throwing you off of your game plan, everyone else that is around you is affected, whether you realize it or not. You are affecting the lives of all of the people that you are associated with. And you see this more so in the corporate world, in the office, at the water coolers and so forth, where the conversation goes on about who's doing this or who's doing that, or who's not doing this or who's not doing that, what the boss is doing or what the boss is not doing, so forth and so on. All of these things are about the devil instilling fear in you in order to trip you up, to keep you off of your game plan. And you see, when you allow these negative thoughts to enter in to your mind, it takes away the energy that you need to be able to obtain that goal that you have set out for in this year of 2014. So if you're living in your season, which God has placed you in this year as being your season, then you have to be able to have all the energy that God has already given you in order to be able to go to that high place God is trying to take you. So how can you get there when you are living in fear and living with a suspicious mind, being intimidated by the devil and his game in trying to destroy God's kingdom? And who's God's kingdom? You are God's kingdom. God's kingdom is built within you. And when you allow Satan to be a part of that journey, Satan is doing his job, but you are not doing your job because you are now not on your game plan. And so when you laid out at the beginning of this year your new life, and that the old way of doing things in 2013 was not going to enter into your presence in 2014. So let's look at once again, when we think about the children of Israel. When God sent Moses down to Egypt to bring the children up out of slavery, he brought them to the Red Sea, and he brought them across the Red Sea into the Promised Land. And once they were into on the other side of the Red Sea, God at that moment shut the door. He shut the door on old Pharaoh and all of his henchmen. And so at that moment, Pharaoh and all of his henchmen were drowned in the Red Sea. And so when God shut the door, he shut the door on the past. And the past was the children of Israel and how they had lived in slavery. And God said, this shall not be anymore. I am shutting the door. And when God shut the door on something, he shuts the door tight. And that door cannot be opened unless you turn around and open it. So the children of Israel are now on the other side of the Red Sea. Now, if they decided to go back into bondage as they wanted to in the very beginning, what would they have to do? They would have to part the Red Sea or be drowned trying to cross back over. Who wants to go back into something that God has brought you out of? You see, that is the way that we are. You know, God brings us out of something. He brings us through something, the trials and tribulations of life. We look at 2013. We look at the difficult periods that we faced in 2013 and see how many obstacles were there and how difficult some of the times were and how we had to deal with those difficult times. Then why do you want to go back into 2013 and dredge up all of that old stuff and then bring it into your future? Remember, God shut the door. God shut the door on 2013. 2013 is no more. It will never be again. So therefore, if it will never be again, why would you want to be able to do the same thing, bring that old stuff back into 2014? God shut the door. And when God shuts the door on something, God will never open the door. But Satan will do that. And how Satan does that is that he gets into your mind. He begins to disturb your mind. Let's listen to once again. Let's look at down here at verse 6 in chapter 1, where Paul is talking to his brother Timothy. He says this here. He says, "Wherefore I put thee in remembrance that thou stir up the gift of God which is in thee by the putting on of my hands." In other words, you see, Paul is telling his brother Timothy to stir up the gifts that are in you. Stir them up so that you can use these gifts in order to have a brighter future in 2014. So if you want to stir up the gifts that God has placed into you, you have to think on the goodness of God, His mercy, that He has the good things that He has done for you. He brought you out of the wilderness. He brought you out of the trials and tribulations, and He allowed you to be able to have a future in 2014. And now you want to live in fear. You want to live in doubt. You want to live in all of that negative stuff that God brought you out of. How can you, my brothers and sisters, claim that you love the Lord and you believe in the Lord? You have faith that God will do all things that you ask Him to do. And if you say that and you actually believe that, how can you live in fear and doubt and suspicious of everything and everyone that's around you? You see, the two does not add up. You know, this is where you have to be willing to make a change in your life. You have to be able to live in the presence and stop living in the past. All right, let's look at one other situation. When we talk about the future and being able to have prosperity in 2014. When we look over there in 1 King and we look at Elijah and when God had sent Elijah down to live at the brook and the brook dried up. And what did God tell Elijah to do? He told Elijah to go to the city. And when you go there, God says, I have already placed a woman there that is going to help you. So what does Elijah do? He goes to the city gate, and then he discovered that there is this woman that God has already told him that was going to be there. And what is she doing? She's there picking up sticks. She had 2 sticks in her hand. And Elijah calls out to the woman. He says, "Hey, ma'am," he says, "would you fetch me some water, please?" And the woman says yes, and started to walk away. And he says, at the same time, bring me a morsel of food. And the woman looks at Elijah, and he says to Elijah, he says, "I don't have but a morsel, and that is for my son, and we're going to eat this, and then we're going to die." You see, the woman had in her hand, she had her future in her hand. She had food in her hand. She had oil in her hand. She had flour in her hand, and she had power in her hand. But what did she say? She said, "I don't have anything." She says, "I just have enough for one meal for my son and I, and we're going to eat this, and we're going to die." You see, that is the way that we are right now. We're living in the past. We're living in doubt. We're living in negativity. We're living in fear. We're living in suspicious of everything and everyone that's around us. And we're seeing what we don't have and what cannot take place rather than believing on the goodness of God. And you see, when we stop and think about how God has good he has been to us, even though we could say that we had trials and tribulations in 2013 and things did not go the way that we actually wanted them to go, but we are in 2014. Yes, we are. Why? We're here because of the goodness and mercy of God. You see, this woman that Elijah had met, God had placed her in his future. He had placed her in his present, and not only that, God had placed her in Elijah's future, in Elijah's present. So when God placed people in our future, he placed people in our present. Why cannot we live in that moment and stop living in such negativity, stop living in doubt, stop living in fear and suspicions of everything and everyone that's around us? Why cannot we just enjoy the goodness and the mercies of God? Because if we believe that God is going to take us through the things that are keeping us or have been hindering us in the past, then we have faith. But are we exhibiting our faith, or are we exhibiting the fear of the devil? Which one is it? You see, this woman that was there, she was exhibiting all the negative things in life. She was exhibiting her past. She was exhibiting 2013 because she had lived in poverty. She had lived in lack. She had used up everything that she had. She didn't have anything else. She figured she had one more mouth of food to eat, and when she ate that, she was going to die. She had prepared herself to go into her bed with her baby and lay down and die. You see, this is where we are. We're preparing ourselves for the worst things to happen. We're not preparing ourselves for God's goodness and God's mercy and looking into the future of where God is trying to take us to, where God has brought us from, and where God will continue to lift us up when we fall down. All we have to do is just ask him. You see, when God sent Elijah to the city, he told Elijah about the woman and what to do. So Elijah immediately obeyed God, and he asked the woman for a drink of water and a morsel of food, knowing that that's all the woman had at that moment. But the woman did not know that she had power in her hand. She did not believe that God can do anything, but she had proclaimed it up until that point. She had lived this life in 2013 right through to the end, probably had a good job, or whatever the case may be, but she ran upon bad luck. And so she didn't have, in terms of her thinking, she did not have anything that was left. But God had plans for her. You see, my brothers and sisters, this is your season, and God has plans for you. But you have to be able to live in this season. Just as the 4 physical seasons of the year will come and go, all of the things here will also come and go. You see, if this woman could have seen what was taking place and in her future at that moment with Elijah in her presence, a man that she had never known, had never seen before in her life, she was suspicious of this man coming into her presence and then asking her for food and water. God brings people there for a purpose, and it's his purpose. But you see, God has a purpose for you also. But you got to be able and be willing to live out your purpose, the purpose that God has purposed you for. That is what you have to be doing. You have to believe in the possibilities of what this day is going to bring you. And if you get through this day, tomorrow is going to be a better day because you're living in the presence. You're living in the future and you're leaving the past behind. And when you stop leaving the past, and that is the door that God has shut tight, and stop trying to go back and open that door and dredge up all of the mistakes that you have made, all of the people that have been in your life before and cause you problems and harm and difficulties, look at the future of Elijah being in your presence at all times. This is your season, my brothers and sisters. Learn to live in this season, in this moment, not yesterday. Leave yesterday behind, because there's nothing that you can do to bring it back. But all you can do is allow Satan to dredge up all of those old memories, old anxieties, old fears, old negative thinking, and he will do that when you allow him in. God said, I shut the door. And then if he shut the door, your future is in the presence, not behind you. So what are you going to pick up out of there? Oh, well, you say, well, you know, I had memories of things that happened to me in the past, and I can use those things in order to be able to help me in the future. What happened to this woman that God sent Elijah to? She had memories of the past, things that had happened to her. But what did God say? God told her to provide for her servant. And Elijah simply did what God said do. He asked. And God says all you have to do is ask, seek, and knock, and the door shall be open. Your future is now. Your future is not in the past, but your future is in the present. My brothers and sisters, you got to learn to live in the present. Stop living in the past. Stop allowing doubt and fear and envy and jealousy and all of these things that has hindered you from being successful in the past to hinder you from being successful in the future. This is your season. 2014. There are a lot of our friends, our families, our relatives that slept through 2014. They're asleep now. But God awakened you. And God says, arise, shine, your future is now. My brothers and sisters, learn that. Learn to live in the present. Your future is in this day. It is in this season. And it is in this time. I thank you for allowing me to come into your homes and into your hearts this day to teach this message. A message that God laid on my heart to give to all of his children. So I bless this message to you because God blessed it to me, through me, for you. So may God bless each one of you with great abundance. Live out your purpose. Miracles still do happen, but you got to be able to live in the present in order to be able to have those miracles happen to you in the future. Do not be like the woman at the gate. Do not doubt what God can do. God bless each one of you, and until we meet in our next Bible study lesson, peace.